It all started with a sound that I would remember for a long time. The sharp metallic rattle of a spray can, the kind you hear before graffiti, or maybe some cheap perfume. But in this case, it was neither. At that exact moment, I didn't realize it was the start of something much bigger. I didn't know it would end in a federal case, jail time, and the HOA scrambling to cover itself. For months, things in the neighborhood had been tense. The HOA board, especially its self-appointed enforcer, a woman named Deborah, had been pushing new rules without proper votes. She patrolled like it was her personal kingdom, looking for violations in people's driveways, their gardens, even their trash cans. And ever since I moved in with my service dog, Titan, I could feel her eyes on me. Titan wasn't just a pet. He was my medical lifeline. A large, calm German shepherd trained to detect oncoming episodes before they happened. He wore his vest, clearly complete with the federally required service dog patches. Most neighbors smiled at him, but not Deborah. She called him that beast and questioned if he was really a service dog or just an excuse to keep a big dog, the sea. Day, it happened, was bright, almost painfully so. I had Titan in the small park inside our subdivision, a common area maintained by the HOA. He lay in the grass, enjoying the sun, while I checked my phone. That's when I heard it. That rattle. I looked up and saw Deborah approaching, holding a can of something in one hand, her lips twisted into a tight smirk. I didn't have time to react. She leaned over Titan and pressed the nozzle. A sharp mist shot into his face, and he yelped, staggering back. My heart lurched as I recognized the smell. Pepper spray. Everything after that was a blur of movement. I dropped to my knees, calling Titan, trying to flush his eyes with my water bottle. Deborah's voice was just background noise, something about keeping the neighborhood safe and no aggressive animals allowed. The crowd gathered fast. People took out their phones. Some yelled at her, but she didn't seem to care, almost enjoying the attention. I was too focused on Titan's watering eyes, his heavy panting, and the way his normally steady body trembled. Later, after the vet visit, after Titan was stable, I started researching. What Deborah didn't realize, and what I was about to discover, was that spraying a service animal wasn't just cruel. It wasn't just against HOA rules. It was a federal crime, and that meant the next chapter of this neighborhood war wasn't going to be fought in board meetings or email threads. It was going to be fought in court. The following morning, I woke, up to the low, exhausted sigh of Titan still recovering in his bed. His eyes were puffy, and he avoided light. The vet had given me ointments and instructions, but my mind wasn't on that anymore. It was on the folder open in front of me, printed pages from the ADA website, case law summaries, and one particularly important statute. Under the Americans with Disabilities Act, interfering with a service animal is a federal offense. It doesn't matter if you're a stranger, a neighbor, or, in this case, the president of the HOA. There are criminal penalties, including jail time. I gathered every piece of evidence I could. Photos from the vet, my HOA payment records proving I had a right to use the park, and the video one of the neighbors had filmed showing Deborah raising the can and spraying Titan. You could hear people gasping, see her expression, smug, unrepentant, almost daring anyone to stop her. By midday, I was at the local police station. The officer on duty didn't even try to hide his reaction when I showed the footage. His eyebrows went up. He leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Yeah, she's in trouble." Things moved quickly after that. The police contacted federal authorities. An investigator from the Department of Justice called me the same week. They explained that this wasn't just an animal cruelty case. It was an ADA violation, and that meant serious consequences. Word spread in the neighborhood like wildfire. People whispered over fences, sent me anonymous messages saying they had their own stories of Deborah's harassment. Some admitted they were afraid to speak up before. Others wanted to know if they could join whatever case was building. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, the flashing lights came. 2 police cars rolled slowly into the subdivision, stopping right in front of Deborah's pristine, rule-compliant front yard. She came out onto her porch, looking annoyed, probably assuming they were here to discuss some HOA business. Instead, they read her rights. The neighbors gathered in stunned silence as Deborah was handcuffed and placed into the back of the squad car. The HOA board scrambled, calling an emergency meeting that evening. They released a vague statement about misunderstandings and personal disputes, not reflecting the values of the community. But no amount of spin could erase the image of the woman who once lorded over everyone being driven away in a police cruiser. Still, the story wasn't over. Because when federal charges are involved, there's a lot more that happens behind closed doors. And Deborah's situation was about to get worse. The weeks after Deborah's arrest were oddly quiet in the neighborhood. No more threatening letters slipped under doors. No more reminder emails about trash can placement or lawn length. It was as if the HOA had gone into hiding. I, however, wasn't done. The DOJ kept me informed. Deborah had been charged under federal law for interfering with the work of a service animal. The maximum penalty could include fines in the tens of thousands, plus up to a year in jail. And this wasn't her only problem. The local prosecutor had also added an animal cruelty charge. When her court date came, I attended. Titan stayed home, still recovering, but calmer now. In the courtroom, Deborah looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, sitting stiffly beside her lawyer. The evidence played on a large screen. The spray, Titan's cry, her smirk. The judge's face was unreadable, but the jury's wasn't. After deliberation, the verdict was guilty on both counts. Deborah's lawyer pleaded for leniency, citing her stress and dedication to her community. The judge didn't bite. She was sentenced to 6 months in jail, plus community service and mandatory ADA sensitivity training upon release. The HOA, desperate to save face, issued a public apology, not to me directly, but to all residents affected by recent events. They quietly voted Deborah off the board and replaced her with someone far less interested in policing people's lives. Neighbors who had once avoided me now waved, sometimes stopping to scratch Titan's ears gently. It felt like a shift, not just in how people treated me, but in how they saw the HOA's power. As for Deborah, the last I heard, she was serving her time in the county facility. The HOA no longer mentioned her name, as if she had been erased from the community's history. But I remembered. I remembered the sound of that spray can, the smug look on her face. And I remembered the moment I realized that sometimes standing your ground isn't just about personal pride. It's about holding people accountable in a way they can't ignore. In the end, the neighborhood was quieter, Titan was safe, and the HOA queen, who thought she was untouchable, had learned the hard way that even the smallest act of cruelty can carry the heaviest consequences. Because no matter how many rules you write, no matter how many people you try to intimidate, federal law will always outrank your HOA handbook.